This episode is brought to you by Podcash, the collaboration between Racket and Stir. Podcash is free cash for your podcast. Podcash gave away $100,000 to up-and-coming podcasters as a way to support insanely creative and inspiring podcasters. I ought to know because I'm one of those podcasters that received a winning cash sum. I know how difficult it can be to get a podcast off the ground, and this is why I'm so excited to have been a Podcash winner. I would have gone nuts for something like this when I was first starting out. If podcasting has been on your to-do list or you're already a podcaster, go to podcash.com to stay up to date with future Podcash happenings. That's podcash.com. And I thank all who voted for me and made me a Podcash winner. That's podcash.com. I am Al Cooley from Ghosts in the Valley podcast.
This is Kel Wepperson, book author and team owner of Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. You are now listening to Ghosts in the Valley podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Eric Freeman Sims, paranormal researcher, investigator, and host of the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. You are listening to Ghost in the Valley podcast.
This is Beth Darlington, paranormal investigator and owner of Access Paranormal, and you're listening to Al Cooley and the Ghosts in the Valley podcast.
This is Warren Ajus, author of Evidence of Extraterrestrials. You are listening to Ghosts in the Valley podcast.
And I am Al Cooley, host of Ghosts in the Valley podcast. Hello, and welcome to Ghosts in the Valley podcast. I'm your host, Al Cooley. Today I have Jordan Cline. He is the host of the Fireside Paranormal Podcast. Jordan is also the host of Whispers Radio, an insurance account representative at State Farm, and he has so many stories to share, and I can't wait to dive into the knowledge that Jordan has to offer. I'll be right back after these brief messages with my interview with Jordan Cline.
Are you looking for a new book to read? Check out my newest book, An Awakening by Wendy M. Cope, last name spelled K-O-K. Basically, it's a story of good versus evil, and these things slowly start taking over the residents of this small northern town of Neillsville, Wisconsin, and I would love it if you would read it. My books are available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Book Baby Bookshop, everywhere really, and you can find me at wendymcopeauthor.com.
Okay, today I have Jordan Cline. He is the host of Fireside Paranormal Podcast. Jordan also has an associate degree of science in child development from the Belmont Technical College. He is a percussionist with the Barefoot Church, the host of Whispers Radio, and insurance account representative at State Farm. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Hello, hello, hello.
I hope I got all that right.
Okay, Whispers Radio was a show that I hosted. I think I ended the show about 10 years ago, and that was kind of the precursor to this show, or what I host now. Barefoot Church, I no longer play at. I'm now at New Heart Covenant Christian Center, and that's where I play. It's my family's church. My dad's a pastor.
Okay, the Whispers Radio, is that a podcast or was that a radio show?
It was actually, it was AM 1600 WKKX. It was a local AM station here. And then I would record the shows and then podcast them out afterwards. So it was a little bit of both. It was kind of I guess it was before podcasting really became a thing. It was like back in 2008. So there wasn't a whole lot of podcasting going on at the time.
And I see you were a percussionist for the Barefoot Church.
Yep, hand drummer. Yeah, I've been playing, man, since I was like 15. So it's been a few years. I'm 37 now.
And were you like a leader in the church too?
Yeah, I'm actually an ordained minister. My family's I have several pastors. My dad's a pastor. Like I said, New Heart Covenant Christian Center is where we're at now, and that's in Martins Ferry, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Barefoot Church is in Myrtle Beach. So I lived down in Myrtle Beach for about 9 years, and that's where I was playing there. As far as drumming goes, I was also the percussionist for a band called West Finley. It's a Christian rock band.
What did you say? Martins Ferry, Ohio?
Martins Ferry, Ohio. Yep.
Before we get into the paranormal and your podcast, I'd like to get some background on my guests and the history. So let's go back when Jordan Cline was just a little kid and you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, goodness gracious. I think everybody wanted to be a ninja. I think I always wanted to be a firefighter. I think that was always a big thing.
I remember, when they asked me that question, I always wanted to be an attorney.
Yeah.
Speaking of firefighters, we had my classmates, I think it was probably about the 5th grade, and her dad was a firefighter. It was just amazing to me. It's like, I want to be a firefighter, So I think my answer might have changed like maybe 10 times before I actually graduated,
Oh, absolutely.
And never did do what I really wanted to do, which was go into law.
What stopped you?
Well, I probably life, how it goes when a family member gets you into their place where they work. And so I went into the steel mill and I spent 45 years in the steel mill until I retired.
Oh, wow.
So I stayed there the whole time, so I was I was laid off here and there, but in between those 2 or 3 years, I was out of work, I had numerous other jobs. But yeah, I never planned on staying that long. And, and then one thing led to another, and then you get married and you have kids. And yeah, I just stayed, and that's what I did mainly, and being a musician myself,
Okay. What do you play?
I play guitar and been in and out of bands for the past 50 years,
Now, if you were going to practice law, like if you were going to go back in time and redo it all right now, what kind of law would you practice?
Probably criminal justice,
Defense or?
Probably prosecutor. Because, I don't think I could live with myself if I defended somebody that I knew was guilty.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Okay, how many attorneys do you know your client is guilty and you still defending them? I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, I don't think I could.
And so being a percussionist in the Barefoot, was a Barefoot Church a non-denominational church?
Yeah, it was non-denominational. I played at several churches here in the area. Harbor of Hope, which is in St. Clairsville, Ohio. There was Barefoot Church, and then, with New Heart.
And being a church leader, I see, since your degree was in Associate of Science degree in child development, do you think you used any of that? You could use any of that in your children at the church?
No, I didn't do so much of that. I have a degree in Bible and theology as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably used that more. With child development, a lot of it was geared towards child psych. So I spent some time working in psych hospitals and things like that. I don't want to say it helped me to understand more how people were thinking, but I will say it helped me to step back and be more empathetic to situations and kind of look at things from the outside instead of just judging the situations by immediate emotion.
And what was the Whispers Radio about?
All things paranormal.
Oh, really?
It was a paranormal talk show, much like my show is now. It was me, my cousin. Very interesting origin story, if you want to get into that now.
Sure.
So other than just watching like the TV show Ghost Hunters, there really wasn't much going on. My cousin was in college and he was doing a paper on tourism, and the topic that he was given was paranormal tourism. And he's like, man, where do you find that out? How do you even begin to start researching that?
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I don't know if you're familiar too much with where we are or if your listeners are. I'm about 20 minutes away from the old West Virginia Penitentiary.
Oh, okay.
One of the most haunted locations out there.
That's on my bucket list. Yeah.
It's beautiful and wonderful. It looks like an old Gothic castle. For any listeners, go look it up. Just West Virginia State Penitentiary. It looks like a Gothic castle. It's incredible. It's been used in so many different movies. He found a ghost hunting 101 class, and it was taught by Miss Sherry Brake, who is one of the, I would say, the top tour guides, one of the top tour guides as far as ghost hunts goes. She takes trips to Ireland, everywhere throughout Ohio, West Virginia. I mean, she's several awards, been on every TV show you can imagine. and she was teaching the class, which was really neat. And man, we got hooked. The first little audio we got from, one of the jail cells, you catch something on your little tape recorder, and we're like, what? No. Hooked ever since. So we started a group, and it was called the Wheeling Society of Paranormal Research. So WSPR, Whisper.
Was that a paranormal investigation team?
Yep, sure was. And we were a group for a good while. We used to go on a local radio station to present evidence. The different shows would have us on discussing different things, things that would come up in the area. And then from there, they were like, hey, do you guys want a show? And we're like, heck yeah, let's do it. I guess we did the show for about 6 years. Yeah, it was pretty successful. We got to talk with some of the legends in the paranormal field. Everybody on TV shows. We had them on movie stars we've had on. I've interviewed Ernie Hudson, one of the Ghostbusters, which was a peak for me. That was a big deal growing up watching Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah.
Lorraine Warren, had her on the show. Demonologists, huge people in the field and what they do. And really getting to dig in and make connections with them, I think was amazing with that show. We had quite the following with it. So I'm glad I was able to be a part of it.
That sounds interesting, because the only thing was available, and I was the Art Bell Coast to Coast,
Oh yeah.
So that was my go-to for strange and ghostly events or UFOs or anything you want to talk about paranormal. See, on your podcast, you have a silhouette of Bigfoot on there.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever investigated Bigfoot? Or
I have not.
Because down in your area, I believe you're by Wheeling, West Virginia.
Yep, I'm in Wheeling, so I'm kind of surrounded. I'm surrounded by areas that people see Bigfoot.
I was just going to say that because I have a friend of mine that just he hunts down there, so he hunts around Elkins and Wheeling. He was telling me about 2 encounters he's had in the woods while hunting. Of about a big hairy creature looking thing. He doesn't tell anybody about it because who's going to believe it? He told me, he's not out to make a buck off of it. So I took him for his word, twice. I mean, then he said it was right outside of Wheeling where he's seen both of them.
I will make a confession for anybody who listened to my show back in the day or is listening to your show and wants to go out and listen to some of my old programs. I was in my 20s. And I was very outspoken about how stupid Bigfoot was.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't stand it. Every time we'd have a Bigfoot guest on, I was like, bleh. Like it wasn't my thing. And as I got older and, understood the world differently, I think in our 20s, we all think we know everything. You realize that you don't. And I got so into cryptids here within the last, I want to say 2 years, just not necessarily that I would want to go out and run around in the woods. I like to go hunting. So I definitely don't want to think about stuff being out in the woods while I'm walking around by myself up a hill with a flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
But, for having the chance that something's out there that we don't know, and then you can get into what is it? Is it an animal? Is it a fae? Is it, extraterrestrial? Is it, a bleed through from another dimension? I mean, it could be so many different things, and so many different sightings have had so many different, situations that go with it. I mean, very well documented cases like in the Chestnut Ridge area of PA, which is kind of outside Pittsburgh, where they're seen holding glowing orbs and disappearing and, coming in the same time that UFOs are sighted. You just never know what it is.
Yeah, and that's what the paranormal is, it's just the unexplained. Since I'm writing my book now about a haunted house I grew up in 50 years ago, I know what I experienced in that house. So I think everybody's story that they give me, I listen to them, because I know what I was called back then, crazy, a kook, it didn't happen. And it's only taken me 50 years to write this book, but it's something I've always had a fascination with was the paranormal, even though I've never seen a UFO myself or Bigfoot. But I've had another friend of mine who went hunting in Alaska and he spotted baby Bigfoot. Think about that one. So it was a night where baby Bigfoot tried to enter their tent he was sleeping in, and he never seen the mama Bigfoot, but he did see the baby.
There's a lot of uncharted wilderness out there.
So, in the paranormal field, since I did say it is a huge area, what would be the area that interests you the most?
I think I'm more partial to ghosts like you. I had an experience when I was younger, in a haunted house, or at least what I perceived to be haunted. I'm pretty sure I understood things that were going on in that house. I think that has always seared itself into my mind and who I am. You live through something like that, and then you start really liking shows like Scooby-Doo and things like that are trying to prove the ghosts are wrong, which I think most investigators and folks into the paranormal kind of cut their teeth on shows like that.
I always went out to try to debunk the situation first, before you start saying it was haunted, because 9 times out of 10, it was not haunted. It was something else.
Absolutely.
But, it was the ones that were, yeah, they were.
I'll tell you, I think one of the things that has stuck out to me the most, especially doing, these shows, there are a lot of investigation teams out there that just want to see something paranormal and not necessarily debunk the situation. And I think if anybody had a pet peeve or something like that on investigations, I think it would be the folks that are just trying to see something paranormal, and they get excited when they get a voice, and they get excited about something they might have caught in pictures. And you forget that it's one thing if you're at like the penitentiary or a big, commercial haunted area, you're there for that purpose. But if somebody called you, like a mother calls you and says, listen, I'm scared in my home. My children aren't sleeping. My son sees something in his bedroom. We've been out of peace for weeks now. We don't know what to do. Everybody's been without sleep. We're crying all the time. We're depressed. We need help. And you go into that house, woohoo, look, I got a picture. I think it is one of the most disgusting things that somebody can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of amateurs out there that kind of ruin it for the people that are serious and take the building, the history serious and the person serious. And then you have other people out there that they buy their equipment off of eBay or whatever, and they think they're a ghost hunter, or they go in looking for something they don't know what they're looking for, and they can get into something they shouldn't be getting into.
Or they provoke.
You don't want to provoke. Yeah, no.
So you got somebody in your kid's bedroom. You're let's say, my son is 7. Let's say somebody's in a 7-year-old boy's bedroom shouting, "Come on, show yourself, do something." And then they leave.
Right.
So they charge that area up for that family who's already scared.
Exactly. I see you were at the Marietta Paracon recently.
The Hidden Marietta Expo. Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, it was a blast. I had my table set up. I got to meet a lot of really, really cool folks that listen to the show, guests that I've had on. I had several folks that I'd had on the show were set up as vendors there as well, which is really neat just to connect on that extra level. And I got a lot of really cool stories. What I do is I bring a computer and a microphone and a little setup. I have folks come over to the table and just, share some of their stories. Every one of my episodes, I try to do like a featured story. So I have somebody, giving, their account of what happened. So at these expos, I love the chance to actually sit across face to face with somebody and listen to these stories, because, a lot of times you just have somebody calling it in, or, it's very impersonal, but you're with them. You can see the expressions, you can see the excitement or fear or anything like that as they tell these stories. And I think it's very, what's the word I want to look for? Vulnerable. Opening up to these experiences that people share. It's very intimate. And I think it's really, really special and really neat. And I appreciate everybody that comes over and shares with me.
I've listened to a few of those, and they are interesting. I love when you have somebody with firsthand experience. This is the person that witnessed the event. Sometimes, just being there and sharing a story.
Well, I think it's really fun too. Let's say they come up and they're like, well, I really don't have a story. I just have this one thing. And then they start talking about it. It's like the most, you could have had 30 people at your table that day telling you stories. And it could be like the one that leaves your jaw drops, like, that's the only thing. Well, I haven't had anything too paranormal, but there was this one time that,
Yeah, like the one girl, I don't know what her name was, but she was on there. She was talking about her ghost experience, which led into another story, and that would lead into another story. But her one story took you into like maybe 4 stories, And she's she's like, got like another half hour I could share with you,
Yeah, I had to like cut her off. And then there was this one time, and I'm like, holy moly, like, how are you still alive with all this?
In your first year podcasting now, what has been your pros and cons on it so far on your Fireside Paranormal Podcasting show?
Okay, with Fireside, there's been a lot of trial and error with equipment. I don't know if any of your listeners are too familiar with podcasting stuff. I quit doing whispers, back when my 9-year-old was first born. just because, we moved from West Virginia to Myrtle Beach, just got married, just got a house, just, new baby. There was a lot going on and I couldn't handle it. I always said, I wish there was an easy way for me to keep doing this show.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to wait until, I guess, technology caught up to my brain to understand how to run things, to be able to start back up. And then by that time it was too late. I had to call it something else because so much time had passed on. But figuring out the best way to run certain things, certain programs, to make everything run smoothly, I think it's that's been the hardest. Another thing that's been tough is with Whispers. I had about 20,000 listeners live and then about 15,000 downloads a month, with the show. So I had a pretty good audience that I was going through. So I didn't really have much issues talking with publicists and things like that. With this show, starting from nothing, you talk to people that, I still have a lot of networking that I had done and friendships that I kept up with, but some of these publicists, you'd reach out and say, "Hey, listen, I got this show, let's discuss." And they're like, "Well, what stats are you running right now?" And you're like, well, about that, it's a brand new show. I'm just starting it up, but not my first rodeo. I know how to do this. And they're like, let's see some numbers first. So that was a little bit of a hiccup, smack in the face that I got just to, I don't know, humble me.
Yeah, I think, mine is, meeting people all around the world that can share the same story with me. You'll find out like somebody in New Zealand has the same story that I have here in Ohio, or you may have there in West Virginia, because everybody has a ghost story.
You say that was something that was hard to learn the first year of starting up?
Something hard to learn was, I knew that the audio and the video, because I had my own video production company for
nice.
20 years. So I knew in playing in a band in all the recording studios and playing live and hundreds of gigs, so I knew that end of it. But it was like you say, the networking and monetization of it. And, it's the same stuff that, like, even on the music industry with watching what you can and can't say, or copyrights. And there's some certain guests that want paid for their time. I had one person got kind of snippy with me from England. I wanted her on the show and she was wanting me to pay her $100 for every half hour. And I says, well, actually, you should be paying me. And she's like, excuse me. I said, well, I got 50,000 followers and I'm promoting your book,
I've never had anybody ask for money for it, because this is advertising for them.
Yeah. And she wanted me to go through her publicist and her agent. I said, no, I'm not going to do that, And she kept bothering me after I told her, well, we'll just forget about it, but she kept bothering me. Well, instead of $100, we'll go $75. No, we're not going to go nothing, So that didn't work out. But, most of the people are all decent people. And
I know most authors that you talk to, like, will just give you books. I couldn't tell you how many times, I just start getting books in the mail just for people that wanted to come on the show.
Right.
Even at these expos, you start walking around, they bring you books, like they're wanting to charge you.
I'll be right back with the rest of my conversation with Jordan Cline from the Fireside Paranormal Podcast right after these brief messages.
Not feeling the popular music on mainstream radio today? Do you find yourself longing for the glory days of rock and roll? Well, we've got something for you. CLE Rocks is a podcast focused on rock and roll, the artists who defined it, the moments that shaped it, and the stories behind it all. And we're giving it to you from the city where rock and roll was born. Hello, Cleveland! CLE Rocks features interviews with music legends past and present. We explore the untold stories behind some of music's most memorable events, and we engage in lively debates that go far beyond the Beatles versus the Stones. If you want to know what it's like to be a former member of KISS, karma's a need the lowdown on Bruce Springsteen's new album from a member of the E Street Band?
Bruce doesn't make bad records, but this is a very unusual, powerful record.
Or wonder what it was like to witness Nine Inch Nails' iconic Woodstock 94 performance?
There were 350,000 people there, and you couldn't move 1 inch to the left or the right or back. You just had to go with the crowd.
Check out CLE Rocks with me, your host and music journalist Troy Smith, straight from the birthplace of rock and roll.
So I learn a lot too from my guests. I never was really into the Fae. Didn't even know about the Fae until last year. So I've been doing this for years. I knew about, the little people from the Native American culture. The cryptids, I still have a lot to learn on that. There's so much out there.
I'll tell you, a good person to talk to if you want a good show on the Fae where you really want to learn a lot, a guy named Ron Murphy. He's written so many books, really ties everything together on different situations, whether it be regionally or creature-ish. I mean, whether he's done books on vampires, mermaids, everything and how they tie into different areas and cultures. And it's really amazing, but he does a great job tying the Fae into different scenarios. Another one would be Chris Balzano, and he's an author. He has a podcast as well called Tripping on Legends. And what he likes to do is really go out and research folklore, to find out where it came from, the history behind it, but really digs into a lot of like local lore and legends from all over. He's in Florida now, but he's been all over. But they would be great references for you to learn all that stuff.
I do always love having different authors and guests on the show. Like I say, learning from them and their experiences. And I listened to Bishop Long on your show and got a hold of him. Matter of fact, I heard him on another podcast, and I says, "Oh, there's 2 podcasts he's been on. I'm going to try to get a hold of him." I had him on.
He has such a heart for everything going on, not only for, ghosts and he's a demonologist, but the heart in it is so much deeper than a lot of folks that you talk to, just digging on that spiritual level. And I know right now with everything going on in Russia and the Ukraine, he has some clergy friends out in the Ukraine and they're feeding him kind of what's going on. So I don't know if this situation's still going to be going on when the show airs.
I sure hope not.
I definitely hope not, but follow Bishop James Long on Facebook, and he's given a lot of accounts on what's going on and some updates that we're not hearing elsewhere. So
yeah, when I did some background research on him, I was just overwhelmed that he's like you said, big heart, and how he helps out so many people and so many battered women and homeless people, and to him it's not about the money, making the money. It's naturally getting money to help these people.
Well, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he was awesome. All right, getting onto the UFO part, the Pentagon last year released a report. What did you think about that?
Oh, you're getting deep, Al.
That's a deep one, yeah.
There's different things you can look at. At the time that was being released, there was also a lot of distraction in the government, so I don't think it got a fair, I don't want to say journalistic review. I don't think it was broadcast enough. I think the only people that really paid attention to it were the people in the paranormal circles, and we're all talking about it. Nobody else is, because they were all distracted. You pretty much have the government saying there's these things right here, and they're not ours, and they're not anybody else's, but they're there. We're still going to look into them. Pretty much all it said. So that's big news coming from the government to admit that there is something there. There's pictures, there's reports, pilots, astronauts, all this going on. Yet, look over here. There's something else going on. We'll see you later.
I was excited that they released a report. Like you said, they finally acknowledged to put something out there since Project Blue Book, but it was really nothing new to me, or probably to you, because if you look at what those 23 incidents, whatever they dove into, there's only one they came up with a conclusion, which was a weather balloon. So my big thing is, after, you do your history of some of these UFO crashes and these pilots that are still missing, that were missing years ago.
Yep.
Nobody touches on that, about these lives that were lost, chasing these things.
You have that, and you have astronauts that come down. I mean, Edgar Mitchell would talk about how, he would be, briefed before going off and then debriefed that he better not say anything about what he saw.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have all these accounts coming out of things being up there, but really the only people paying attention to it are the people in the field.
Right.
You go down to the grocery store and ask the cashier if she's heard it. She's going to be like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't broadcast out.
You had a recent guest on your show that was the lead investigator for the Northern Appalachian Paranormal Society, Jay Blackburn.
Yeah.
I really dug that one, man, because he was talking about, a place I've been to a couple times, the Hillview Manor.
And I've heard a lot about the Hillview Manor. It's a place that I had not heard of. He talked about it, and there was another group called, it was like the Paranormal Hounds. I'd have to look it up. It was one of the earlier shows, but they did a lot there with Jay, actually. They knew Jay, and they'd done cases together there at that place. You said you've been there before?
Yeah, twice. Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Did you get any evidence? Did you have any experiences?
I had zero evidence. but I know people that have, the one time I was there, my only complaint there was too many paranormal teams there that day.
Yep.
One person was saying they were getting, the other team was getting something totally different. And I don't believe neither one got what they said they were getting. That was just my personal opinion. But the person in the back of the room that was contacting the spirit was Hispanic. The spirit couldn't speak English. So she was communicating. And I thought that was very interesting. And she didn't have any equipment,
How did she know it was communicating?
Contacting through like telepathic communication.
Was she just saying that somebody was talking to her?
Well, what she did was after she got done talking, the tour guide was like, "Oh my God," and she knew who she was talking to.
Oh, okay. So there was something else backing it up. She just wasn't
exactly. It wasn't just her.
Like a manic episode.
Exactly. Right. But there's been times where I went out, I'm sure you have too, where it's like fishing, you go out and sometimes you get something and sometimes you don't.
Can't plan a haunt.
I always felt that my biggest tool in investigations was myself. 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't get it on the spirit box or dowsing rods or anything. I was grid, so I was just getting it through me when I was investigating a hogback bridge in Hermitage, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Because I had numerous reports on this bridge. And so I went through and I had back when I had my production company, my actors, my lighting crew, my sound crew, and I was getting nothing, not zilch, nothing. So I sent them all on their way. So I stuck around by myself. Then I got down the gully, looking up at the bridge, taking some videos, some pictures. And that's when I was pushed from behind. I mean, like violently pushed.
Oh, so you felt it.
Like somebody got a fist and just hit you in the back with it. I mean, it was,
man.
And that's a scary moment, I'm telling you. Or, getting up on the bridge and a cool breeze. It was like 90 degrees that day, very hot, humid, and a cool breeze, like ice breeze that went through me, And once I got to the top of the hill and I walked back to my crew, my actress that played the ghost I was filming, we had to leave her on the bridge alone, which I still regret doing to this day. You make some mistakes,
You wait, hold on. You had an experience where you got hit, and then you had an experience on a bridge, and then you're like, "Hey, Sally, we're gonna leave you here for a little bit."
No, I left her there. My experience happened after I left her there.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put her in that position. Yep.
This is gonna be great film.
Right. No. Matter of fact, she only agreed to do it because she knew the area. I told her I'd have a bodyguard for her under the bridge, which I did. I took, but as things turn out, half my crew didn't show up. My actor didn't show up for playing the driver of the car. So I had to use her bodyguard as an extra. And I had to leave her on the bridge by herself for maybe 3 minutes. During the 3 minutes, she was petrified. I mean, couldn't wait to get out of there.
Really?
So I regret doing that. I would never do that, or did I do that ever?
What happened to her? What happened?
Well, she was pushed, knocked down, scratched on the leg. I'm lucky she didn't sue me, because I mean, that was, as she put a violent experience. It wasn't as dramatic on my video as what happened in real life. So, I wish I would put out a second one, like the behind the scenes or what happened outside of the filming, like after everybody left, and I'm coming up on that bridge, and after I was pushed, and then a county sheriff was driving along. Well, he was curious, what am I doing holding cameras walking across this bridge in a gully, and I was telling him I'm doing a documentary, and he was all into it, and he was telling me about what he knew about the legend. So, moments like that, it's like, and it's happened to me numerous times where it happened outside the equipment.
Now, isn't it something also like you said, it wasn't that dramatic on film?
No.
And nothing ever is. But in that situation, I mean, if something just barely touched you, that's enough.
That's enough.
I don't need to be hit with a sledgehammer. Like if something just like flicks me on the ear, you're there. I got you.
Right. But it's the thing of it is when you tell somebody that, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think where most of my guests that come on, that's always the response they get, whether it's Bigfoot or cryptid or the Fae or spirit or UFO. It's yeah, okay. And even if you show them the evidence, if you have it on film, okay, yeah, I don't believe that.
And that's a shame, Al, because if you think about it, there's probably more people that have had experiences than there are that haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's saying, "Oh, that never happened, whatever that happened." But there's more of us than there is of them. So why are we quiet about it?
Right. So that's what I like to love about these podcasts, like your podcast, my podcast, because now you got so many paranormals out there that you can go to and listen to, that you didn't have this tool back in the day. You didn't have this to go to.
People don't feel alone anymore.
And I think what your Whispers radio show is probably about, because they can relate to you.
I mean, one of the big things, everybody has these stories, and even if it's getting hit like you got hit, or it's getting just a tap on the shoulder, or something little like somebody blew by your ear, right? That experience could be like the light touch could be just as traumatic as getting hit like you were. And everybody has these stories, and everybody has these situations, and whether or not everybody in the world thinks they're real, that person, it's real to them, and it was traumatic to them, and for them to even want to share those stories is amazing. But I think we should really normalize being able to talk about it, because I mean, the government's talking about UFOs, right? If the government's talking about it, can't we talk about it too? Why do we, somebody walks up and says, "Hey, I saw a UFO the other day." They'd be like, "Hey, don't talk to Al. He's lost his mind." But the government is talking,
Oh yeah.
Astronauts talk about it. Fighter pilots talk about it. But if you or I say something about it, we're nuts. We're completely bonkers.
You being a Christian, I ask this to all my guests on here, whether you're atheist, Christians, and everybody else in between, do you believe that you can move a spirit on?
No. As a Christian, no.
Do you think that your soul automatically goes to heaven or hell?
Yeah, I mean, to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. And how, I don't want to say naive, but how egotistical do you have to be to think that you can do something that God can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh, this person died and Billy down the road is going to help them cross over, but the Lord of all creation cannot do it. But thank heavens for Billy.
So what was that then you would say that pushed me from behind on that bridge? Would be a demon?
See, and there's so much different, there's so much. Well, here's where we can get deep into it, because there's different types of haunting.
Mm-hmm.
How do you classify an intelligent haunt? Especially when we take paranormal, an apparition can be one of millions of things. You might see it as a ghost. Another might see it as, let's say, an extraterrestrial that's wearing some kind of suit to hide what they're looking at. It could be a dimensional creature or person from another dimension that's, pierced through the veil, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
There could be so many things, and the paranormal realm can hold, all of this. And I'm not saying I necessarily believe in each one of those, but, if we're going to believe in one, let's believe in all, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it could be any of those situations, and it's not necessarily a demon. Now, do I believe that there is demonic spirits? Yes, absolutely. Is every spirit demonic? No, because what is the spirit? We're calling it a spirit in our understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be fae. It could be an elemental. You can get into, we can get real deep in here, talk about Nephilim and, the bodies of the Nephilim that have fallen. You think of like evil spirits and things like that. The Nephilim didn't go to heaven or hell because they were the crossbreeds of angels and people. And that's biblical, but it also says that they weren't entered into heaven. They weren't entered into hell. Where did they go? Here are these evil creatures. Sorry, the cat just jumped up on my head. I'm like fighting with my headset here.
Yeah, you're talking about evil spirits and something jumps on your head.
Right, yeah.
My first guest I ever asked that question to was an atheist. So, and his whole team was atheist or agnostic, so his response is, you're not moving a spirit, or even God's not moving that spirit on, because there is no God, there is no heaven, there is no hell. So if you're going to move a spirit on, or if it moves on its own, then you're killing the spirit. And I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I love to get people's different answers on that.
Well, folks forget too, Al, that there's residual hauntings. Not every haunting is intelligent, even though in the second that we are seeing that specific haunt might seem intelligent to us, but it could be something that every 5 years on the second Tuesday in March, this certain thing happens. It's a residual energy that we just happen to notice.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Right.
So there's a lot that plays into it. And I think it's crazy to believe in the spirit world and into paranormal like we are and not fathom all of it.
Right.
How can you think a spirit is evil? Well, what does that mean? What is an evil spirit? What does it come from? If you're going to dig just shallow, you're wasting your time. Dig deep into it.
I just know as a kid growing up myself in the church, I was always taught in church. Then you start talking about this, it's all evil because they didn't want to talk about it. So they just labeled everything as evil.
Yeah, a lot of folks do.
Mm-hmm. Especially back in the day, so this wasn't talked about at all. You just didn't talk about the paranormal in different groups, At least I didn't see it happening.
When we started our group, it was almost like a ministry in itself. And I couldn't tell you how many times we had leaders in the church come to us asking for help because they were afraid to either talk to their congregation about it for fear that, what would be said, or they would be afraid to talk to their pastor about it because of the stigma that follows it. You would be surprised. And a lot of times, like you said, you can debunk most of it. If you're uncomfortable, you're afraid, you want clarity. And we live in a too judgy culture.
Well, we do. Great. Well, before I get off here, I want to ask you, what's your plans for 2022?
In general? Oh, I don't know.
I mean, any places you want to go to investigate, or you have plan to go to investigate?
Well, something that I'd really like to do, I used to, back with Whispers, I used to rent out the penitentiary every year and do an event. I would like to try to do that this year. I know with COVID restrictions and things like that, it does put a damper on how people want to travel and the things that they want to do. But I think things are opening up, and I would like to maybe rent that out and host a big event there for everybody. Again, we had a lot of fun at those. I used to bring in, different personalities, I guess, whether it be folks from TV or somebody to teach, while they were there. So the first little bit, they had some kind of lesson, whether it be, from somebody who's doing exorcisms to, how to use the equipment correctly. And then, set them free in the penitentiary, for the rest of the night. They were always a good time. I think I'd really like to try to do that again. If I do it, you'll have to come up to it.
I wanted to make Marietta Paracom because of COVID in my family. The timing was absolutely terrible.
Any event at the pen I want to be at. Like I said, it's a great location.
Yeah, I had it on my list of, that's one of the places I want to go to. Hopefully I can make it this year. All right, Jordan, it's been a great time having you on the show and sharing your stories, and hopefully I'll meet you at one of these Paracoms.
Absolutely. And for any listeners out there, if you want to check out my show, if I can plug it there for a second now, Fireside Paranormal Podcast. We're on Apple Podcast, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, I think Samsung Podcast. We're on a bunch of, anywhere you listen to your podcast, Pandora, YouTube. I'm starting to hit YouTube hard, trying to grow that. Try to release a show every Monday. So catch up with it. All the socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter. It's at Fireside Parapod, Parapod. TikTok. That's been a lot of fun. Just throwing up different clips of the show and things like that on TikTok. I wish that was around back when I was doing Whispers.
Oh yeah.
Just because we had so many neat guests. I every now and then I throw a little clip up from an old Whispers guest just because I think they deserve their time in the sun. Some of those old interviews.
I'll put all your links in the bottom of this episode, and thank you for coming on today.
Appreciate that very much, Al, and definitely can't wait to meet you one day.
Thank you, Jordan Cline, for your interview. Jordan is the host of the Fireside Paranormal Podcast. I will have all of Jordan's links at the bottom of this episode. Please click on them, go to them. They're very interesting. Thank you again, Jordan, and I will see you all in 2 weeks with another great episode on Ghosts in the Valley podcast.